Well, it's nice to see everybody. There's a lot of you, and that's wonderful. We're so glad to have all you here tonight. Welcome to all our students and our faculty and staff and alumni to the first installment of this year's Hospitality Innovation Speaker Series. Every year during the fall semester, we are joined by industry professionals, including Board of Advisors members, who share their valuable experience and knowledge about innovation in the hospitality industry and in their businesses. With the virtual format at Cal Poly Pomona, we are fortunate to be able to open this event up to many more people than normal, and we are excited to welcome students and alumni from around the globe. Today, Lera and Sean von Straatum have tuned in from their home in North Hills to discuss innovation in the club management industry. Lera graduated in 2009 and is currently the Assistant General Manager for the Beach Club, and Sean, a 2010 grad, is the Director of Food and Beverage for Oakmont Country Club. Here are the von Straatums to tell you more about themselves. Welcome.
Thank you so much for the warm welcome and the introduction, Dean Dobson. This is awesome. So without further ado, Sean is over here and myself. We're in clubs now. So I think I reeled Sean into clubs a few years ago after his career, but I'll briefly touch on where I've been since 11 years ago, graduating from Collins College. Right after graduation, I moved to Colorado because it was a tough 2009 and management positions were pretty scarce. So I opened myself up to all states and found a really great offer from the Club Management Association of America conference and accepted it. Sorry, we have planes flying over us. Hopefully not crashing down.
What? Okay.
Well, there was an accident 2 days ago.
Okay.
Anyway, so after spending almost 2 years in Colorado learning how to ski and snowboard, it was time to move to a city, and Sean and I moved together to Chicago because that was his idea, because he wanted to work for Charlie Trotter. And I followed and found a job with Club Corp, a corporation that runs, owns, and operates almost 200 clubs around the country, some internationally, but now primarily in the country, and stayed with them for a decade. Learned a lot, but a year ago realized it was time for me to move on to a nonprofit world in clubs because it's a different beast. You definitely hone in a different skill set. So as of a year ago, I work with another graduate of Collins program, Ivy, who's the GM, and I am her assistant GM at the Beach Club in Santa Monica.
Cool. So the great thing about hospitality, and especially us being not only alumni from Cal Poly, but also married, is that we kind of understand each other's lifestyle, and we've kind of woven that intermingly together. So graduating in 2010 from the Collins College, I was immensely focused in the back of the house, mostly in luxury restaurants. So my work experience in school was primarily at Gary Danko in San Francisco, which is one Michelin star restaurant. From there, I met Charlie Trotter at the Pebble Beach Food and Wine Festival in 2009, and I was like over the top. I was like the most charismatic, awesome chef to ever meet. So I wanted to go work for him. Many of my colleagues asked me like, oh, you know, in school, where are you going to work? And I'm like, oh, I'm going to work at Charlie Trotter. And they're like, oh, wow, you got a job. And I was like, nope, I didn't even interview yet. But I'm like, I know I'm going to work there. So I went out to Chicago. I did get the job making like $10.50 an hour, but working at one of the best restaurants in the country, especially in Chicago. It was a 2 Michelin star restaurant, Relais and Chateau, and 5-star for 25 years of its existence. So wore multiple hats there, but started in the kitchen, working in the vegetable station. So they had 2 tasting menus of 8 courses. So really honing my skills as a chef. At that same time, I was certified as a sommelier. So I wanted to get some of the front of the house experience to really use those skills that I had worked so hard to get. And I shifted into the front of the house, really going pretty quickly from a runner to a captain in the dining room within about a month, which usually took to 9 months to get there. And the main reason is I already knew the food because I had been cooking, I had studied the wine, so it was an easy kind of evolution. So then he announced the restaurant was closing, and we started to lose staff, but then we got twice as busy, and I started wearing even more hats. So I did reservations, I helped with the wine program. I learned I can do floral arrangements, like ballet. Like there was nothing that I couldn't do at that restaurant. But the amazing thing, it set me up for everything else that I did later on. So moving from there, went into the front of the house at the Peninsula in Chicago after the restaurant had closed. So going from one of the best restaurants to the best hotels in the city. Stayed there for about 2 years, did wine stuff as well as my first management job. And then I landed at the Viceroy at L'Hermitage in Beverly Hills, which I stayed for 4 years. They went through a massive renovation, so I got to see that part. And then I joined the dark side of clubs. No, I'm just kidding. But it was just, I kind of wanted to keep my progression going of, working in independent restaurants to kind of boutique and luxury hotels into kind of my hand at clubs. The greatest thing I started to realize when I did make the jump into clubs and private equity clubs, more specifically, was that I could use all of this luxury background and experience and really better the membership. And the thing is, when you work in a club, what I've started to see is that the members are there. That's their second home. And really, we are just there to make it better. So in the kind of for-profit world, you're not really acknowledged the same way as in a country club or a private equity club, because they are heavily invested in it. They've paid initiation fees, they pay monthly dues. So they really care if the club is doing well and they want you to succeed. So when we have these victories, they're really all about it and you just get to the forefront of it. But also then you have 750 bosses, so that can be a little hard to manage too, because they all have ownership in the club. But being at Oakmont has kind of opened my eyes to that world, and yeah, we're happy to be in it. So.
Awesome. Well, I didn't know it was that detailed. I was supposed to probably go
Whatever.
into more detail on my story. But anyway, today we wanted to talk more about, a few aspects that have transpired in the last few months. 2020 has been crazy for every single person here, I'm sure. And to cover it in 1 hour is not possible, but we'll try to do our best. And please jump in and type in a question. We have a second screen with questions going. And then if you want to just speak out a question, or just so we can tailor our conversation a little bit better. We don't want to wait until the end because, this guy talks too much. But the 6 main points that we really wanted to touch on today will be technology. Second would be to talk about just COVID-19 programming and what that could look in club or any hospitality setting. HR or / staffing needs and situation as it's shifted. Kind of just fun and motivational stuff that have to continue going. You can't just put your hands down. You have to look up and do creative and fun, exciting things for yourself and for others too. Sean primarily will touch on county guidelines and SOPs because he's way more organized in that regard. And we'll talk about future, what this year now means we're going to have down the road in 10, 20 years from now, because I think you can really gauge that and talk about that.
And like Lera pointed to, we're going to kind of touch on those 6 points, but feel free that we're going to give you kind of like a little time slot between our topics that we talk about. If you want to ask any questions, again, feel free to use the chat bar. We want this to be more of a conversation than a lecture, because a lot of you have probably different questions and kind of guidelines, especially majority of you are going into the industry. Some of you are already in the industry. So we want to kind of keep it a fluid conversation and a talking point. So
yeah. Did you want to kick off the technology or do you want me to?
I think you can.
So technology really, especially on my end, was the main kind of first thing that came up to my mind, what we had to implement and kind of pushed us even further out with the COVID-19 kind of pandemic that happened is utilizing everything that's in here, really, right? And like Sean was earlier mentioning, older members are okay with it because they'd rather be safe. They'll place their food order through the app. They will place their equipment or tea time through the app. They will choose the location on the grid for the beach location where they want it to be and time when they would like to show up. They don't, of course, they sometimes call, they want that human touch and human interaction, they long for it. But a lot of times it's safer for them now to just, do it with their fingers and not needing to be asking where I am or where's my food or what time do I need to pick it up and things like that. And, those are the details. But of course, just communicating with our membership through the app, push notifications when the parking is booked up and there's not enough space, when we're socially distancing everyone, we're on a third of our capacity than we normally can do. So it's definitely putting a strain on how many people we can accommodate and at what pace, for dining or for gym usage or for any athletic reservations, for paddle tennis or bocce and things that we do at our club. We really have to just we had to transfer everything from pencil and paper to virtual and online. And of course, for the reason why we haven't done that up until this point, because members were valuing that human interaction the most. They said, well, come on, we're a family, we're home at the beach. This is what we want. We want to walk in and get a tennis court. We want to walk in and start working out, but it's not possible anymore. So this really pushed everyone to agree to finally embrace the whole technology piece. And yes, they sometimes complain about it and, not knowing how to manage it. But once they get a hang of it, they see how conveniently a cocktail arrives to their beach spot, kind of like that, with a server delivering it to them without them needing to stand in line to order it first. Then they say, you know what, we can try it. We like it. Actually, we can make that transition and that switch.
And I think it's a twofold conversation. It's what you're having with your members and guests, that interaction and kind of that experience, but then also what you're having with your staff. And it's really, especially with clubs, because I've worked in so many restaurants and hotels that are way more tech savvy than I would say some country clubs are, which really do the pen and pencil. And like, I've walked into my operation when I first started and I was like, how are we not like going into the future? Like, we are still in 1985, and those are the things where I think it's done it not only for our industry, for globally through all industries. You look at Twitter has gone completely remotely for all of their offices. You have, I just heard on NPR today, like Amazon HQ2, when they were, in 2017, going through all these different cities that were going to have their big, 10,000 plus jobs, that's now dispersed. And that can be in a small little town in Nebraska, and you'll have 2,000 jobs show up because now everybody's working remotely. So I think it's propelled us all into this future tech savvy relationship. And I think that's where, like Lera said, we can't lose sight, especially in hospitality. The more technologically advanced we get, we can't lose the person-to-person interaction, because that is what hospitality is. It is that feeling of being home, being welcomed as family. And when we start putting all of our emphasis down here in our phones and not here face-to-face, we lose that personal connection. So I think it's treading very lightly between that technologically savvy, but then remaining really hospitality and service focused. Mm-hmm. So I think we've both done that in our clubs, and it's teaching our members that, are sometimes 87, 90 plus years old, how to use an app. They're so used to just calling up and they'll book a reservation or whatnot. And we're like, hey, now everything's going to get streamlined through this process. So that creates a little bit of training opportunities, and especially for our staff too. Sometimes they're in a slightly older age bracket and technology doesn't come very easily. It's about being a really good trainer. And primarily, like Lera and I both will say, especially working in clubs, I would say majority of our staffs are older than us. So how do you manage someone that's sometimes twice your age? And I think that comes with just respect and a lot of patience, because you can't talk over them. And you have to bring everybody up to the same speed. This is not something we were, maybe in high school or whatnot when we got our first cell phone. You have to kind of put all those things in perspective. But once that technology becomes an aid and not a nuisance, it really can benefit your operation quite a bit.
I see a question from James. James, the app that we're using is developed by Pacesetters. It's a company based out of Florida, but they primarily focus on private clubs. So I'll type in the name in a second, but they develop customized apps. They're not very interconnected in terms of point of sale system, right? So like when our food order comes in, it's not automatically fired and printed in the kitchen. Unfortunately, we have that person doing it manually, but however, there are benefits to it being a small company because they tailor everything to how our needs. So when we put in a request, they upgrade our platform and make the grid or the menu the way we want it to be. And it's relatively quick as opposed to going with Club Essential, for example. They do have apps too, and they're really well done. However, it takes them 1 to 2 weeks to get back to us, and they're closed on the weekends and holidays in terms of tech support. So it's really inconvenient, whereas this company gets back to us on Labor Day.
That's my company. We're with North Star, so they're a jack of all trades and a master of none. So they do everything from accounting to membership management to tea times to the app and the website, and nothing all functions that great. They do expansively, like the whole program, but there's other programs that could be better. So you kind of pick and choose sometimes.
Yeah, you have to choose what's going to work best for the location of the club.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Cool. So let's move on down. Please feel free to jump on in if you have any questions. Like I said, I want to keep it moving, but have a conversation at the same time.
But just to touch on the human part, for example, on Labor Day, what we did is we had a human person manning a booth that had a big sign that said, new to the app here, Elena will help you out with that, right? So Elena was running that. She's also Columnist grad that I hired to work with me in marketing department. And now she oversees a lot more projects than just marketing. And that was a really nice touch because, she has her mask on and shield or whatever, but she has a little button here with her name and a fully smiling face. So people feel like, okay, I know you, I remember you.
Yeah, it's a really cute thing that Lera did at her club. She has these little pins that they took pictures of all the staff that without a mask and all the PPE stuff, so they can actually see what they look like. And Lera had a really funny story. I'll take it from you, but yeah. She hired people and they were in the lunchroom and she saw them. And she was like, "Who's that over there?" And she literally couldn't tell the difference between when they have a face mask on or what their actual face.
I don't even know what half of their face looks like anymore because they started after March.
I thought it was hilarious, but that's kind of the times that we're looking at right now. So let's kind of move on into COVID-19 programming, and that's kind of my bread and butter of what we had to do. So March, when all this hit, we shut down. Many clubs, including Lera's club, they kind of just closed and just said, let's just have everybody go home, members, staff, and we're going to figure this thing out as we go along. For Lera's club, they ended up paying everybody through those 2-3 weeks that it was kind of that up in the air phase. Oakmont, on the other hand, never, ever closed. We stayed open the whole time. So in March, we went literally, I remember to the day, it was the 16th that everything closed down. It was a Monday. Tuesday, we took kind of a dead day. That was St. Patrick's Day. By the 18th, we had a full-fledged to-go program up and running. So we were selling normal meals Wednesday through Sunday, or actually Tuesday through Sunday. And we put a small menu together, chicken, entree, salmon, some salads, things like that. By the next week, we had doubled the menu offerings because nothing else was happening. And then into the third week, we started a grocery program so that we could sell things like deli meats and eggs and milk and, all PPE of gloves and toilet paper and all the things that people were going crazy about, hand sanitizer. So we had kind of a program going, and even some of our members, Mark Miller, he's the CEO of Pick and Save. He was able to hook us up with, sanitizer bottles and face masks and all this crazy stuff. So we had that kind of rolling into that. And in April, it was all about kind of how do we heighten this member experience, So we wanted to keep people engaged. So we went from maybe doing 20 covers a night to, in May at our peak, we were doing 100 to 150 people per night ordering to go from us because everything was shut down. I think our highest number was like 220. And that wasn't even like a holiday. It was just a normal like Friday. So I think the thing was that we kind of had a head start because I had a lot of general managers and food and beverage directors calling me and like, hey, how are you guys doing this? So we did a curbside pickup. So literally we had names and lists and, you know, just in Excel, nothing too fancy or anything. So we had it all timed out in 30-minute increments so that when the member would pull up, we would have their order up front. I had a manager outside and a manager in the kitchen, everyone expediting. So literally the food was still being cooked to order. It wasn't banquet style. They would pull up, they would pop their trunk, we put it in their trunk, and they're on their way. So we made it so quick and easy that it was just like a no-brainer for our members to come to the club, as opposed to pull up, get out of your car, wait in line. Like, it became really difficult for them to get stuff. So we quickly saw that obviously the numbers weren't there. We were almost basically selling everything at cost, and we didn't have any banquets to offset those costs. So the thing is, we quickly said, this is a service. It is not a revenue profit generator. This is a service to keep our members from talking about all the dues that they're paying for my club, $450,000 a month in all the different dues that we collect. No one, for the most part, maybe a small percentage, even talked about, hey, I want a due reduction. Because Oakmont could say, hey, from the get-go, from the day one, we had programming. We had something going on. And then we hit them like crazy in May, where we did everything virtual. We had over 10 to 12 different virtual events, including a cooking class. We had wine events. We did cocktail classes. We even did a virtual, or we did a drive-in movie theater. So we started rolling through this as soon as we saw money. And as soon as we saw engagement, we saw the members being engaged in their club, and that we could keep that value up for them. And that even
That's $450, right?
Yeah.
For $450 a month. So that's the monthly dues plus additional.
Collected, yeah.
Plus additional cap.
Right.
I know.
So then we rolled into, okay, now we're open in June, right? And how do we kind of still get that? And it's not per member, it's collected total. So for us, golf members pay $1,000 a month. And then we have social members that pay about $300 a month. So it's a different kind of breakdown. And then they still pay for food and beverage costs after that, and golf costs and things like that. Into June, once the kind of club reopened, we did try to do like a wine dinner that was half virtual, half in person. No one came in person, and it was still all virtual. Whereas this last 2 weeks ago, we did an in-person wine dinner. It was beautiful. It was all outside. So it's really kind of still gauging your membership. At that wine dinner that we did in person 2 weeks ago, I had 2 couples that had not stepped outside of their house for dinner, like to actually eat somewhere. They've come and played golf at the club, but they haven't eaten at the club since March. So we had, you have these extremes where I couldn't get, you know, even some of my board members to put a freaking mask on. And then you have people that have quarantined since March. So I think dealing with that huge wide variety, it's us trying to keep them engaged yet safe, and all the various things that we're doing. So you can say what you do in your club.
Well, you know, in terms of programming, just to piggyback on Sean, you know, I pretty much always steal his ideas and make them better.
Okay.
You know, but yeah, I mean, it's just, you have to keep moving forward. And to what Josh just wrote to everybody, you know, to his point, you know, not having banquet revenue is hurting everyone, because banquet is what makes money in clubs. That's what's allowing you to splurge and do fabulous events for members and continue to subsidize them. It obviously depends on the club, depending on how healthy the club is financially and what the reserves are like. Some clubs are not so lucky at this time. Maybe they just went through a big renovation, and they're still assessing members, and members are not super happy about that. And then the compound effect is, you don't have much reserves to sit on, and you can't just say, oh, well, we're just going to lose $500,000 this year and we'll make it up next year. You can't afford that philosophy, and that sucks. And that's what, is happening to all moms and pops in restaurants here, independently owned restaurants, is because they're missing out on all those events and parties and everything that's been canceled, and it's awful. But at the same time, you're doing a bunch of cocktails to go. You're doing a bunch of retail all of a sudden. You're selling prime cut meats and just, the best produce from your stores and with recipe cards, and, essentially pimping out your chef, to go and do things for the places like that, You have to just keep going. Otherwise, someone else is going to come up with that next idea that's going to be the 21st century thing, So we're kind of on that cusp, right now, where if you're, not creatively thinking at how to continue and how to still continue employing people and being creative about that, then you're going to become a dinosaur in a few years, So it sucks. It's not going to work for every club. What works for Sean's club doesn't work for my club, because my club is way more conservative. We still check temperatures and we still make people sign waivers. Whereas Sean's club, they just let you in, and they allow guests and family members and things like that. We don't allow guests. So that completely eliminates anyone's requests right now on a small 10 people gathering or even eight people wedding, because some of the family members are flying in, from out of state, and we have a policy now that if you fly, you have to quarantine for 2 weeks, So there's just all this stuff, the political stuff that goes into it, and it's not as simple sometimes as to say, oh, here we go, do this program, and it's going to save you and make you money. Of course not, there's not going to be a magical cure there to do a bunch of virtual events and everyone's going to be, excited and happy all of a sudden. No, my members didn't take on virtual gatherings as much as Sean's members did. Different dynamic, his is more
different clubs.
Yeah, my club is, family, little children, older people, the whole spectrum of political opinions, and the whole spectrum of views on the coronavirus. And then for Sean, it's a little bit more, I would say, cohesive. It's a neighborhood. The whole neighborhood is there. So, and they're tucked away. They can do a lot more. They can do a drive-in movie night, whereas we tried and health department shut it down. They can do certain things that being way more exposed in the boardwalk in Santa Monica, where everyone's looking at us. And we got 3 visits back to back from health inspector because one of our own called them and said they're breaking the policy. They have 2 cases or 3 cases back to back, and it's considered an outbreak. They should be shut down. We think it was an employee, maybe it was a member, highly doubtful, probably an employee that we've recalled, essentially said, you have to come back and start working, and this is how many hours we're going to give you, and they're going to miss out on unemployment back in like June, July, August, right? And our employees weren't happy, some of them, because they were, unfortunately, okay, not getting exposed to the virus and collecting unemployment. So asking for them to come to work was a struggle. Some of them didn't want to, but that's okay. That's why we had to go ahead and hire amazing people, that some of them are on the call here, like Tiffany and Celine, because they're going to be the future of private club business. And now is the time where, working through these really, really difficult situations is pressurizing us and making us, those shiny diamonds that we're going to become later in life. Because, working and selling and running and owning a business while the economical times are really smooth sailing, is not as difficult right now. Is you have to really put, 2 heads together and come up with some crazy ideas and see if they stick.
Just before we go into kind of more staffing kind of things, I wanted to touch on just creativity is the key in this time period right now. So some things that we were able to harness is that you have so much talent under your roof that you just need to make sure that your employees well enough to tap into it. So for instance, when the hardcore lockdown happened in May, there was a big shortage of masks. Masks were now being required everywhere. We couldn't get masks. I tried to order masks, and we were, a month out before we could even get them. So I had Rosalba Lopez is one of my servers, as well as another girl, Alexis. They knew how to sew. So I had them both bring their sewing machines in, and I got really comfortable with Joanne Fabrics and how to order all of that. And I was going downtown every other week to get elastic, and I know just the 1/4-inch elastic and the black band that works the best. So we started making masks. Initially, we had our women's golf group. They all got together to create masks just for the staff to wear. So they would drop them off, and it was really kind. But it got me thinking. I was like, well, if we need masks, everybody needs masks to do anything. So then we started making and selling masks. So we did, in total production, over about 6 weeks' time before masks were pretty relatively available, we made about 650 masks. So all different fabrics, all different types. We had custom orders. They were like, I want a bedazzled mask and all this crazy stuff. But the craziest thing is just you have to think so fast and quick on your feet. And I love my financial controller. She was like, does the labor even make up for the cost in this? And I was like, get out of here. Like, what other club is making masks right now? Like, whatever organization is making, we beat Gucci to make masks. Like, the thing is, like, you gotta be ahead of stuff. So the same thing is like when we heard that all the kids are going back to school virtually, you got to be ahead. Like, what the best thing is, I have a funny story, which I heard, like, I always listen to NPR on my way to work and whatever. And they're like, oh, these parents are forming these pods, and that's how the kids are going to learn and everything. So I'm like, okay, cool. Like, this is my side business. Like, my brother and his girlfriend and my cousins, they're all teachers. So I got the teachers' assets. I got the people, like my club members, that are going to want their kids out of their house. So I was like, yes, we can do this tutoring program. So I was just like at a manager meeting, just pitching it to everybody. I was like, this is going to be my side business. And then the gears start working in my general manager's head. And I'm like, no, I don't want to do it here. I want to make my own money on the side, like my side business. So then he's like, no, we're going to start at Oakmont Academy. I was like, damn it. Okay, fine. So basically what we did is I hired about 4 tutors that now run our Oakmont Academy. So it gives our members super cheap. It's like $10 an hour. And it's just, again, we're losing money on this, basically breaking even if we have enough students, but it gives them an outlet where they have a dedicated tutor to help them through the educational aspect, through the technological aspect of getting on Zoom and keeping them focused, basically, so they're not like running under the tables and stuff. So they're actually focusing on school. And it's very flexible, so they can come at any time of the day. And then we offered, because that didn't really take off as best as we wanted, an after-school program where they would do 1 to 2 hours of arts and crafts, and then they would go over to the pool afterwards. So I think it's those kind of things where, a lot of managers may say like, oh, I don't even want to deal with that. Like, that's something so outside my realm. But at the end of the day, we don't have events. We don't have all these things that we're literally creating stuff. In the past month, we had maybe 7 events. They weren't scheduled. None of that was scheduled. We created it. And I think the most creative people win. And I think what Lera and I were talking about, that's kind of heads us into the staffing conversation, is especially those of you graduating or going into this kind of crazy ass world that we're in right now, is that you all have to be more of a generalist than a specialist. And the fact that expose yourself to as much things as possible so that you can really jump and morph and change and be flexible, because now that I'm a principal of my Oakmont Academy, I never thought I would be that. So you have to be ready to take on any challenge. And I think exposing yourself to as much as you can in school was my biggest benefit. I wasn't just in the restaurant clubs or the culinary clubs. I was still in CMAA, and I still had my outreach. So all the people that Lera and I know in our lives right now are basically from Cal Poly and from different clubs and organizations that we were involved in. So I think that kind of lays that foundation. But then just think outside the box. Nothing is crazy right now. You can try anything, and it's totally okay, because we're just in a different world.
Yeah, definitely. just to, oh yeah, Sean's gonna catch up on the messages while I talk. In terms of, generalist versus specialist, that's something that we all during difficult times right now have to do. We can't just keep doing the same thing, right? So all of a sudden, Sean is a principal of his academy. I'm Coach Lera because we have also an after-school kids camp, and unfortunately, a lot of the kids that worked as coaches now are off to, do their own thing. So I had to kind of recreate the program from scratch. And it's a, 4-day a week after school program from 3 to 6, where kids are zoomed out. They're sitting in front of screens just like right now. And they're like 6, 7, 8, 9 years old. And what do you do with that? So family members are super appreciative, the members, of the beach club, because they can drop them off at 3 o'clock and we run themselves to, into nothing, because we offer them ocean time where they're boogie boarding or surfing and doing some lessons there. They're playing tennis, they're playing dodgeball and other games that I'm relearning essentially from scratch, because I didn't grow up here. I don't even know what capture the flag is, so I'm learning so much. Mila get excited when she's a little older, she'll have a cool mom because she'll know how to entertain a 9-year-old. But is it worth my time on the big, when I look at it from kind of like this super close, I get sad because I'm like, well, I could be doing something else. Like, why am I babysitting 9-year-olds right now? But on the bigger picture scale, I'm running this program because currently my director of youth is on medical leave. And in order for me to be the best general manager out there, possibly later in life, I should be able to do every single director job. Maybe not perfectly. Maybe I'm not going to be a golf pro or a surf pro or whatever else that's required to be, paddle tennis pro in order to be the director of those programs. But at least I'll have an understanding on how to start a program up from the grounds, how to create it, how to hire the right people for it. What are my members are actually asking? Is what we're providing really truly what they want, or is it something that I think is in my vision? So you really have to keep your fingertips on their pulse and continuously ask and find those channels of communication with the membership and schmooze and talk to them constantly. Be on the water. I'm tan right now because I'm not used to being outside so much, but now I'm constantly outside, whether it's by the ocean talking to the lifeguard that we hired or the members that are there, or the momagers that are there watching their kids, things like that. Just understanding, is this club really provides them the most right now? And majority of the feedback that we're getting is yes. There's, they have nothing else going on for them, and they want to be at this club, and the club is doing so much during these difficult times when people are scared to go places, people are scared to go to work and things like that. So how do we make them feel safe, and how do we provide those services in consistent manner where 3-year-olds have to wear masks in order to interact with one another, crazy stuff. So you have to just embrace that and reinvent yourself all of a sudden and do things that yesterday didn't think were possible, and sometimes be okay with doing something that you didn't expect, or finding yourself to do, like babysitting 9-year-olds and stuff like that, so it's definitely putting not only making you look for a certain type of staff to hire these days that are kind of have multi-level experience, and maybe they have zigzagged through their career instead of a linear kind of career path, that's great, because then you can find yourself, doing something completely different, because this hospitality degree gave you an additional kind of understanding of what is it that is out there, what other dimension you can provide except for just food and beverage and some type of athletic. That's what golf, golf where beach club usually does, some athletic aspect to it.
So yeah, just kind of shifting. I like to mention what Zuzu had said, that they started a kind of a barbecue takeout scenario, or maybe in dining, it actually was, in a parking lot adjacent to the restaurant. And that's super popular. That's what everyone is kind of doing if they have the space. But I think that's an example of kind of what we've even done in our club, is that you utilize the space that you have and you use it to your best of your ability. You know, Lera's talking about a lot of things, oceanside and beachside, and that's their aspect that they capitalize on. You know, that's why you're a member of the beach club. We don't have necessarily that at Oakmont, but we have things like our pool and our golf course. And our golf course is the largest area of space to do anything with. So one thing that we did with our space is that we had a movie under the stars, and actually we've done two of them so far. And essentially we would take the 18th hole, because it kind of goes up as it goes to the hole, and we made the best investment like about a year and a half ago of this huge screen and projector. It's about $7,000 for the pair, $5,000 for the projector, $2,000 for the screen. And that wasn't out of our operating budget. That was out of our capital expenditure to raise our AV program. But best scenario ever. So we took that same screen and projector of our assets that we already had. So we did the drive-in movie theater when it was hardcore lockdown in May. So we put everybody in the parking lot, and we put the screen on the roof, and I have an amazing guy in Jose Palma that I brought over from Viceroy in our maintenance department, who built this stand to have the projector on to shoot it into the roof. Then we took that around the back and we put it on the putting green overlooking the terrace, and we did a dinner and show. So we showed Hamilton for 4th of July when it just came out on Disney Plus. So they had a dinner. Everybody stayed socially distant, right? So you can't have a reception, you can't walk around. Everybody stayed where they are. They have a plated dinner, no buffets. Buffets aren't happening. If you want to have a buffet, you have to have the sneeze guard and the service to provide it. Sneeze guards for a 6-foot table are $1,000. I looked into that. So for us to do a banquet would be like $10,000. And then people wouldn't want that. So plated only, but had this beautiful kind of dinner in the show scenario. Then we took it to the pool. We put it on the roof above the pool. We did a dive in movie theater. So all the kids could like hang out at the pool and swim around, and they watched Aladdin. And then we did Movie Under the Stars. My whole thing about the Movie Under the Stars is because I just wanted to circle the whole building with that screen and projector. So that was the last side, was on the golf side. So that was a hit. And we're doing one more actually this Saturday with Mulan. So I think it's using your assets that are literally just sitting there, and it's the creativity that you got to come up with. Right now for this Mulan showing, we have about 180 people, which sounds like a lot, but if you actually, and we'll get to the county guidelines for social distancing and whatnot, if a restaurant is big enough and it's socially distanced with 6 feet between each table, I'm considering that a restaurant. So I can have 180 people. They did in Germany, like 4 or 5 weeks ago, the biggest concert in the world since COVID. And that was over 3,000 people. And they all had little stage sets of like blocked off seating areas, and they could do it. So it's all about being creative. I think you got to play with inside the rules, inside the guidelines, make people feel safe. But then you got to have fun, and you got to keep life moving, because there's too much negativity. There's too many world problems happening now for us not to be able to progress forward. So it's having fun with your members, having fun with your staff, keeping everybody as positive as possible.
Mm-hmm. Margie has a great question. I'm going to read it to you, Sean. Now you've created the expectation of pop-ups and new things. How are you thinking you will continue to provide this something new clubby once there's a vaccine? Do you think that traditional club events are a thing of the past?
Oh no. I mean, good luck on a vaccine. We'll talk about that on a whole different show. But I'm rolling with this COVID as long as it's gonna go. My whole thing is, let's create something new and let's make it a thing. So for instance, I'll give you an example of my cocktail class. A lot of my members said, like, we're on our cocktail club. We call it a cocktail club. Number 5, I have my consistent joiners. I have about 24 couples that every time they're like, I will cancel plans. I will restructure my life for this cocktail club. And I was like, dang, okay, the interest is obviously there. So it's 3 cocktails, 3 food pairings, and typically me and the chef actually make the food pairings together. It's very hands-on, but it's just excellent. You get set to make two cocktails of 3 different types. And it's all on Zoom. And my members said, why wouldn't you do this in person now that we can be back together? And I said, no, this is a Zoom event. One, imagine having 60 people in a room, because it's 30 couples, and then shakers and ice and dump buckets. And how are we going to do all that? And then also, you're 3 cocktails deep. How are you getting home? Right? So my thing is, like, this became a Zoom thing. So even when we're like fully back to normal, I will still do this event on Zoom. So I think we've created new stuff, but I think some things will stay the same way it is regardless of COVID or not.
So, and then she follows up, how does your CFO feel about that attitude of events?
We clash all the time. We keep it going. We had to do our budget for next year, and the way we built our budget, everything comes back to normal in May.
Magic.
It goes from nada in November to March and April, and then boom, everything's back. I guess that's that vaccine that you're talking about.
So that's tough. Budgeting was tough because
you have to pull the trigger at some point. Like, something's got to come back. We don't know at what percentage, and you got to figure it out. We'll probably most likely forecast every single month of next year, because that's just the way it's going to be.
Yeah,
but,
we have.
Yeah, she doesn't like me too much when I talk like that.
We have a budget A, budget B, budget C. So, I mean, Ivy was going crazy, and myself just budgeting for 3 different scenarios, depending on one event business, one event money will start trickling in again. Because again, that's our, support system to allow us to do these fun and exciting events that Sean is doing. His wardrobe alone probably, is worth a wedding, like, wedding revenue or whatever.
They don't know about my blazers and my shoes. They're crazy.
So doing it on Zoom saved a lot of money,
But also, we took on a culture of not canceling anything, ever. So if we did Cinco de Mayo, we did a takeaway. If we did Mother's Day and Easter, we did a takeaway. For 4th of July, we did the dinner and the show. For Father's Day, we did a anti-barbecue or anti-buffet barbecue. So it's basically, we had the big rig out there and we were cooking like all the barbecue items, but you don't get up to get anything. You say, I want ribs, and then we bring it to you. Like, those are the kind of things that we did. But literally every holiday, we still had something. And I think even into the holiday season, we still got to have something, whether we're inside or outside, or 25% inside, outside. If I got to rent a tent, like, we're going to still do stuff. And I love, like, the brightness in my members' faces when I tell them, like, I'm not canceling anything. And if we're going to do the gingerbread house that usually is 300 kids that come to that, we'll probably split that into 2 or 3 days. And we might do Friday, Saturday, and Sunday of 100 kids on each day. So I think they get really excited when I have the confidence to say, like, I'm not canceling anything. It's going to be reworked and weirder than you can ever imagine, but we'll still do it. And that's, back to Margie's point, my CFO does like that when I talk like that. Because canceling is too easy.
Yeah. Christmas will be interesting this year, to say the least. Visits with Santa for Beach Club have traditionally been the largest family and crowd draw, and I can't imagine how 600 children will sit on the same lap of the same Santa.
No, it's gonna be the saddest pictures of Santa ever. Just like this.
Our idea is to put Santa and Mrs. Claus in the sleigh, and the kids are like, that way, you can't necessarily
on the front of the sleigh.
Yeah, you can't necessarily like sit on or ask even to get there. Anyway, like build a platform so that Santa is like unattainable for children. But anyway, we'll have to be, we'll have to sleep on that. I don't know.
But that's like a year away, guys. We got time till December. All right.
Registration call for Santa Zoom.
Yeah.
Like do it Santa.
Yeah, they can sit on Rudolph. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
But then to kind of just wrap up the call just briefly, before we kind of open it for questions and things like that. One thing I just want to briefly mention about like the county and state and federal protocols, we created a master plan of this giant book that has saved us when we actually did get the health inspection came by. they love that we had that because we took all of the LA County guidelines and boiled them down to what's appropriate at our club. But you have to realize at Oakmont, we are 7 different businesses. We are food and beverage operation, we're golf, we have a barber shop, we have fitness center, we have locker rooms. Like we are literally
daycare now.
And now we're a school, K through 12. So that's like the thing that you have to think about is that we are so many different businesses, and it's crazy how we're all trying to adjust to this, but all of those guidelines contradict one another. So for instance, on the golf course, you have to wear a mask, right? But you can be with your foursome, right? And you all have to be socially distant, and everybody has to be out there, but you have to wear a mask. You can't ride in the same golf cart, but those same people can come into the restaurant, take off their mask, sit at the same table, and eat lunch. How does that make sense? So I get it because everybody's trying to put this whole big, COVID-19 bubble into how do we do it into real life. But as an operator, you can see the frustration that happens of like, okay, so we can do this, but we can't do this, but those are the same people. So I love it because I'll go to the Members Grill every Saturday, and one of my favorite servers, Tara, I'm like, how's it going, Tara? I'm like, oh, she's like, there's so much social distancing happening. You'll see like tables of 6 have like 12 people pulled up, and you're like, this is their experience, and it's really hard to change those norms. But we try to tread lightly between like following the guidelines as strictly as possible as we can, but then we have to still offer that service and that membership and that warm, fuzzy feeling of coming home. So where does the future end for us? Where do we head forward with this? So like we said, some of the things will change for the worse and some things change for the better. And Lera and I were actually just talking about this every night since this has happened. But there are so many silver linings. So at least for my club, the fact that my members at the pool love us for putting a reservation system in place where people have to come and go at a certain time and there's less chairs, they love it. And everybody said, after COVID, I don't care, keep it. Because before they would have basically pools open from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. They would come in the morning and 15 loungers, they put towels on and come back at 1 o'clock. So those 15 loungers were taken. We can't take those back from them. They already came early. So they love it. They say it feels like a resort. We show up at 1 o'clock. That's our reservation time. We're seated. We have a spot. And then we know in 2.5 hours, we got to get up and go. So I think, and then we're really nice about that. If there's nobody taking that spot after you, we'll say, go ahead and stay for the day. But it has increased our pool usage, our satisfaction of our members. And they can see that we're taking care of it. We're clean. We spray each lounger between use. Same thing with our reservations. We had to force people. We used to take 30 people every 30 minutes. We cut it down to 18 people every 30 minutes. So almost in half our members. I mean, I worked in Beverly Hills at a like ritzy restaurant where I had like my clients calling me, hey, you got to get me in on Friday night. I have that at a country club in Glendale. And I'm like, wait, where am I again? Like, y'all are calling me for a reservation. You got to get me in, Sean, please, 6:30. Then I'm like, that's a tough time. What do you got for me? Like, I'm like, what are we going to start bartering? So the craziest thing is, but I had to force my members into this mindset of, yeah, you're going to have to come at 5:30 or 7:30. Like there's no 6:30 reservation anymore. And that's a culture change that I don't want to get rid of, because I go to my chef when we did 130, 150 covers, and I'm like, how'd you guys do tonight? And he's like, this is easy. We were great. Because not 150 people all came at the same time. I was like, chef, this is a normal restaurant. We're actually working in a normal restaurant now. Yeah. Of like, people come at their reservation time and it's spread over 3 hours. So that's the fun part of what we're experiencing now, is like, how can we use this really bad situation we're in a good opportunity?
Yeah, exactly same. I could not even sell open table management of floor plan system to my members before COVID, but now they don't even question, oh, why do I have to, why do I see like an automatically generated email to me after I get off the phone with a reservationist, with the front desk, that I have a reservation, because they understand why. They can understand why they're required to come to the front desk and get seated at a certain time, because before, same thing, everybody wants to eat at 6:30 because the kids are crying, they're tired and they're hungry, and the husbands are ready to have a drink, and the wives are too much fun in the sun, so, and everyone is in the same wavelength. So we went from, accommodating 120, 150 people every hour to doing the same thing. We're now doing 30 every 30, which for us is actually way better. Like, that's our manageable pace. So the pace control is going to stay, and it's working. It's a great silver lining. Our ticket times and satisfaction also went up because food is hot, it's delivered on time. People are not complaining, why am I waiting for an hour, where we all know it was only 25 minutes, but time drags when you're hungry. So people think that Ivy magically walked in and fixed everything. But in reality, it wasn't that. It was just, we're actually asking them to make a reservation and holding them accountable to a reservation.
Like normal people, I know.
So
I know.
It's pretty simple and it's straightforward, but for the mentality of like, this is our home, we can show up whenever we feel like. We don't need, server name tags because we all know them. They worked here for 50 years, no exaggeration. We have people that have been there for 50 years. And, this coronavirus pandemic allowed us to flip it upside down, to change the food quality and blame it on coronavirus, because
just like everybody else does.
Why does the BLT look different? Why does the tuna...
Corona.
Why does the tuna melt taste different? Well, coronavirus, your taste buds, something's wrong. But no, really, we've just taken over the purchasing of this grill department that used to be run by the same guy, still with us. He's still an amazing staff member, but we just put him in a different role. Before, he would run over to Gelson's and run over and order things from God knows where, and just people saw Caesar and said, hey, Caesar, just make my usual. And it was done. It took a while. People were complaining it took too long, but now, the food quality and consistency was suffering. Whereas right now they're seeing a lot more staff, a lot more new faces, and some of them are shooken up by that. They think there's 45 people making their sandwich in their eyes, whereas just, maybe separation of the front and house and the back and the heart of the house. But it's all allowing us to make those gradual improvements. Yes, to membership, it looks like a drastic change, but in reality, it's been in the works. It's been kind of gradually happening. It's just, we finally are able to rip off the Band-Aid and clean the wound and make it all nice and get some air on it, so that we're now moving forward from there on.
One question was, any problems with food vendors? Not so much food vendors. For the most part, for me, it's been the most with beer. Beer has been crazy because in the last, 3 months ago, I talked to a lot of people in the industry, and they were saying that mainly for beer is that they stopped production a while ago. And in that May and June time when a lot of restaurants were closed completely, and we're just feeling the effects of it now. Because that supply chain has kind of been broken. So things like we can't get Coors Light in a quarter barrel. Like, that's crazy. And then we moved to Miller Lite, and now Miller Lite's gone. It's like not even craft, like weird obscure beers, like the normal beers aren't coming in. And even bottled beers, especially in the Mexican factories like Modelo and Corona and other kind of Pacifico, they're starting to get shortages too because their factories shut down. So you're seeing this kind of chain effect, and that happened a little bit, somewhat with food and kind of dairy and things like that, a little bit. Eggs went out for a little bit, but you're seeing it primarily in beer and a little bit in the wine, especially for imports. You're seeing them just kind of slow down just because it's kind of backed up in that process. So it's strange, but we used to have like a beer menu that was printed like monthly because we change our beers pretty periodically, like every 2 weeks. We do that pretty much weekly, if not every 3 days, because that's how frequently we'll order something and literally the next day it will be out. So it's been kind of strange with the procuring of different goods.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we're right at time here, or 1 minute left. But if anybody has any additional questions, hopefully you found this very intriguing and interesting. This is our world. This is what we talk about at 11 o'clock every night. Just the daily chaos is what we go through. But like we said, like, it's really nice to have somebody that's your partner and spouse in this, that also understands all the stress and anxiety that goes into our world right now.
Zoom call us, you know, if we feel like you need to pick me up.
Yeah, but feel free to reach out to either us if you need ideas of where you're at, or if you're graduating or entering this industry and you're like, what the hell do I do with my life? Feel free to reach out to us. We love to mentor. We love to help people through this process. And especially now, I think, like I said, become that generalist, like get involved in everything that you can in school so that you become so valuable and you can be that flexible person. Because that's who we're hiring as people right now. It's whoever can just kind of jump into the mix and not be afraid of anything. So
I just wrote my email address in the comments section, and Sean will do the same. But definitely, you know, stay in touch, reach out. I know a lot of you I recognize. Hi, James. Hi, Josh. You know, your guys in clubs, and it's tough, but guys, I know how it is, and we're all over the place sometimes, but I think it's very rewarding because that's exactly why, because we have so many other levelers that we could potentially pool and do certain things, as opposed to a standalone restaurant or a standalone hotel or corporate world. You know, your hands are tied. Like, for example, City Club LA, where I left, they have 5 employees standing, right? So we went from 90 something employees to 5. It's pretty crazy, you know, and it's just how the reality is right now. And everyone's doing a little bit of everything. An accountant is taking to take out orders, you know, so it's just the reality of City Club right now. But, you know, again, it's not good or bad, you know, it's just we have to reinvent. They have to reinvent themselves, and people that left there have to continue on, and have hired some of them now at the beach club. So
and me at Oakmont.
Yeah.
We have a lot of Cal Poly people working for us.
So that's the exciting part, because we can all kind of stay in the know and help you get the next exciting job, or at least help you get propelled to what you want to do after you're done with the club or not.
Well, thank you both so much. If you'd like to reach Lera or Sean, their emails are in the chat. I think if you guys have time to maybe hang out for another 10 minutes, we'll
I would love
to. And hang out and ask some questions. So thank you all so much. We have 3 more of these. So the same Zoom information works for all of them. So please join us for our additional ones throughout the semester. We so appreciate your time, Lera and Sean, from your backyard. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you, everybody. You guys did a great job.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you, Julia.
I'm gonna send everybody a recording of this discussion later on this week. So please share it with your friends, and I'll add Lera and Sean's email addresses in there so you can contact them additionally.
Cool.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
But yeah, you can make it kind of a free-form conversation. So at this point, and people will kind of leave as they want. But if anybody have any specific questions, feel free to unmute yourself if you can, I think, or raise your hand. And you can feel free to ask us anything. Yeah, go ahead, Josh. You can unmute.
Yeah, so one of the things that I heard you guys doing is a lot of these creative events. But one of the problems and one of the hallmarks of sort of like what my club does, because we're so golf centric, is just getting people to be involved. Like even the social members just don't show up to stuff. To where when we came back and we're on a very limited menu, we're the type of club, we're doing snack bar stuff anyways. We're really a grill. That's our bread and butter. But when they started saying, hey, come back and do breakfast, come back and do steak nights, do something like that, and we'll show up. And then you staff for it, and then nobody shows up, you know? And I think that's one of the things where I've mentioned a couple times to event coordinators, food and beverage directors, like, hey, I heard this really great idea. I read in Club and Business Magazine this great event. Like, let's do that. And the problem is with our club is just, if it's not golf, they don't care, you know? I don't know. maybe you can talk about that or something like that. Ideas.
Well, no, it kind of goes to the same thing. It's like some of our programs that we do at Oakmont wouldn't fly at the beach club and vice versa. I think it's very club specific of what's going to work for your members. So you have to tie into what their demand, you know, what's going to get them going. Like the whole reason why I started the Oakmont Academy wasn't because it was a great idea for me. It's because I was walking around the pool and every single pool social member was saying like, what are we going to do with our kids? You know, so I already saw the demand and the need for that there. So I think with new programming, it really comes up to you being super in touch with your members and then using industry and other ideas to kind of see like, how could I get more young families involved? Like they're looking for something to do. How do I do that? Then you start looking for something to fit that mold. So it's kind of like, instead of going out there and looking, oh, that's a great idea, let me bring it into the club, really get into touch with your member of like, what do you want to see us do more? Like what would bring you here instead of 1 or 2 times a week, 3 and 4 times a week? Like get into those conversations with your members because that's going to guide where your demand is. And then you just supply it.
Yeah. Well, the no-show situation is frustrating. We have, you know, really bad problem with beach equipment. When we say beach equipment, it's an umbrella, chairs, pads, you know, kind of enough for 4 to 6 people to hang out on the ocean, on the sand by the ocean. And we take those app reservations, we set them out, and it's very labor intensive. We went from 300 of those spots or pods of land, of sand, socially distanced, only a third of that, right? So still very labor intensive, especially for Labor Day or any holiday. And we set it out and we had about 60 to 70% no-shows. Why? Well, there is a few reasons. Yeah, weather is one of those. Older people just said, screw this, it's 93 degrees by the ocean. Like, no, I'm staying in the air-conditioned location. And our clubhouse is not air-conditioned. For the rare moments that they go in now only to shower, you know, a couple of things because there's no indoor dining. And then another one was just, you know, they are used to the mentality of like, club is always there, it's plan B, right? So let's make that reservation for this thing that Josh is putting on at his club. But in case, as an backup plan, in case anything else doesn't go through or whatever I'm doing with my family or kids. So do we need some kind of penalty? Is it too harsh? We don't know yet. We'll let the board have that discussion next board meeting but it's a big problem, you know, because we said no, we turned away 100 other families on Labor Day because these people made these reservations and we were accommodating them and more than half of them didn't show up. The 100 people that we turned away are really pissed off. So when other members are pissed off, things start moving rapidly and change happens. It sounds like for you, you won't necessarily, you know, light any fire under anyone, but you might want to have that certain conversation, you know, of, you know, no cancellation fee or cancellation policy. You still charge people. Yes, they might call and ask for it to be removed, but at least it sends the message of the fact that I'm going to charge you. And yes, you can call in and we'll remove the charge. However, again, it's the lesson that needs to be learned for them to say that, look, I can't staff and I can't, you know, it's a club corp thing because I remember, you know, we had to do that. We had to implement the 24, 48 hour cancellation policy, and it was really tough to follow. But once you get a few board members, even in a club involved, they will drive that message. They will stand up for you, and they will actually relay that information onto everyone else because no one wants to necessarily listen to you, but they'll listen to a fellow member or our board member. Who will speak up about that and say, hey, look, it's hurting our club financially. Like, do you want this club to succeed or fail? So, you know, that way you'll get people more serious about committing to their reservations or at least giving a courtesy cancellation call, right? Because that's what drove us crazy because call me the day off. I'll be fine. I'll just call someone else and say, hey, look, this person canceled, come in. So that's definitely an additional kind of revenue that you could potentially be capturing. Yeah. Elena, are you here? Oh my gosh, I see Elena.
But yeah, that's kind of wraps up for us. Does anybody else have any other questions? I think this is really a fun conversation to kind of have.
For sure.
So
James, what are you up to? Your hair, I love it.
Your hair, you're up to your hair.
My hair is pretty long.
That's awesome. You're where Sean was like half a year ago.
No,
I didn't
beating you.
I didn't realize my hair was this curly.
It's COVID. That's why.
But yeah,
What
I'm
are you up to?
I'm still in the Bay Area. Just sheltering here at my parents' house. But I'm currently furloughed from the country club in Boston.
Yeah.
Like I could go back, but there's like a 2-week self-isolation or a
Right.
negative test result to not be self-quarantined. So I'm just kind of hanging out a little bit.
Yeah.
Kind of figuring
And
things out.
that's the part that we didn't really touch on. We wanted to kind of keep it a positive note, but that's a really tough part of what we had to both do in terms of being managers is, you know, how do you pick and choose who you're going to furlough or lay off in this time? I mean, for Oakmont, luckily, because we stayed so busy doing events, we really didn't have to do too much, but I still had to lay off maybe 30% of my staff. And they were furloughed at first up until June. And then even when we reopened without events, that 30% went away because the 30% would have been banquet 100% of the time. So for the most part, kind of I drew the delineation of whoever furloughed themselves in the sense that didn't feel comfortable working or were in a certain age group or, you know, anybody that went out on their own, they for sure didn't come back. But it was kind of my hardest working people that were like, we're going to stay no matter what, you know, and I wanted to respect that and I wanted to show that. But that was a really tough time. Probably the toughest time of me being a manager of like, how do you make those decisions, you know? And some people had been working there for multiple decades. And there's Mila matching.
Did Oakmont have like I guess an emergency situation war chest or anything like that? Because I know like Pacific Union in San Francisco, I read an article, but they kind of kept on their whole staff because they had put like money on side up. But I know that's like a 1% club. So
it depends on the club. It depends on the board and the management, I would say, of what those decisions are. Like for instance, with Lera's club, they kept everybody paid for close to a month with nobody working. And then even with going back to work, they still paid everybody full wages. And even though you were working 2 days a week.
Financially, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Financially made sense for our club because our club is so expensive to operate that with our membership paying $800 a month each, and then they have assessments for capital and things that, you know, with all of those assessments, it covers all of our labor, right? And other, you know, taxes and like, because we lease some beach property, but majority of it we own. So some other operational things, right? But we cancel small things that are add up, you know, like the electricity, you know, like just cut off certain things that make sense. So financially, we're actually lose money operating the club. So it made sense for us to keep people on payroll for a month and a half, and we did better financially than as if we were offering a service of food and beverage and tennis and things like that.
And we kind of do opposite, where our dues only cover about 50% of our total revenues. So we really depend on things like tournaments and F&B outside event revenue and things like that to offset that. Whereas Lera's dues cover majority of her expenses. So she doesn't need to necessarily run the operation to still pay everyone. So I think that comes down to a financial situation with every club, even though both of our clubs are equity. You know, it's literally, we're in the same realm. It's not like I'm for profit and she's not. We're all in the same realm, but we're just kind of set up differently. But yeah, that was the kind of hardest part is we kind of had to have the strongest people survive. And it really didn't matter about seniority or anything like that. It really came down to work performance. But yeah, it wasn't a fun situation, that's for sure. But yeah, so I think we lost half my group here.
no, thanks. No, I agree. I mean, like at TCC, they furloughed most of the staff till August 1st.
Right. Yeah, and everything's gonna be weird for hospitality for a good amount of time in the future. Like I said, when we put our budgets together, we say everything comes back in May, but who knows? You know, I think hospitality is the hardest hit industry of anything. You look at a quarter to a third of all unemployed people right now are hospitality workers. You know, I have so many people that I know from the hotels industry that are housekeepers and, you know, servers and dishwashers. And those are the ones that are out of work because with no travel, you don't have that part of the business. And with no leisure, you don't have part of the business. And when you can't go out, you know, inside of a restaurant, it cuts down on so much of your possibilities. And that's the hardest thing that we're dealing with right now. And unfortunately, hospitality was the first to go out, and it's going to be the last to come back, just because there's going to be so many other industries that cut in front of us in terms of just reopening, that we're going to be the leisure part of it, and that's what we capitalize on. So I think right now is trying to find those silver linings. For instance, I just literally did. I packed up a Zoom wine class. So I put together cheese pairings with 3 different wines that I purchased from my club, and I sold them to actually another Collins alumni that works for a company. And I actually got, from anything, I got paid through Aetna for stress management class. So, but it's thinking outside the box. You know, I'll process, you know, after that event, I'll make like $700 for that. So not to say that you can do all of that, but like have some fun, still be creative in these times that are really tough. And yeah, Zoom and the virtual world, that's like a real reality that's not going away for any time soon. So just get real good at it and see what fun, creative things that you can come up with while we got all the time on our hands. So, but anyway, y'all, I'm going to tap out. But thank you so much for tuning in, and hit me up on either Lera or I on our emails, and if you have any questions, and we're more than happy to help.